Hello, everyone. This is Kato. Just wanted to do some reviews of the tournament that just recently passed and ended earlier today. Um, just this past weekend, there was a rather large online tournament, the first tournament for this website at Palworld TCG.gg. And I wanted to do a top 8 decklist review. And I'm just kind of like looking at these decks blind. I have not watched the replays of the decks. Primarily, kind of just like looking at the deck lists at face value, just doing a bit of analysis on them, seeing what they're good at, what they're not good at. Um, what are what the meta looks like, how it fares against the meta, um, and why the deck works, and how it gets there. So just kind of think about it from a holistic perspective, and what would it look like if you were to try and pilot the deck yourself, going into a tournament, or if you're wanting to play rated on the website. Rated is coming in a couple days, so these are very interesting lists. You're going to see some very cool techs here. So with that, I'm kind of just yapping now, but I just kind of wanted to like get in and explain what I'm doing here, and then that way you can kind of understand where I'm coming from here. So without further ado, this is the first list of the tournament that I'm looking at. Uh, there is a lot of cool things going on. For those who are in the know, dragons are the meta right now. So if I were to go into the meta tab and we take a look at some of the top decks, red blue Chillet sits at the top with the 59% win rate with 20,000 games played, and it takes up 80%. So it is the most played deck. It also has the highest win rate. So it's very obvious like this is the deck to beat in this tournament. And it's very interesting that the first deck list that is played that I'm seeing on this top 8 is a non-Chillet deck. There are 0 dragons. Well, I guess Dino Sum is a dragon, but you're not really playing it because it's a dragon. You're playing it because it's a green interrupt. Uh, and overall, I'm overall really impressed. I mean, there's obviously always going to be someone that is willing to play a little bit off meta as long as they believe that it can beat the meta decks, and this is a very good application of that. It definitely delivered because not only is it not playing Chillet, it got third at the tournament. So big props to the player Super Cativa. They obviously did a very good job with this deck. And anyways, let's get into it. For those I've been staring at this deck list for a little bit and thinking a lot about it. Is the first thing that sticks out is going to be the Penguin Launcher. Penguin Launcher is the centerpiece of the deck from my perspective. Everything revolves around this to some degree. You simply cannot win the game without it, in my opinion. Like, if you're playing against dragons, you really need a way to board clear, reset tempo. If they get too far ahead, they snowball on you. Or if they are trying to um, take back the game when they're behind in tempo, let's say they drop like a Jormantide, or they do like an Aurora Guide play with Chillet, you can completely just like screw them over with a good penguin play. And as you can see here, you're maxing out on the penguins, but not only are you maxing out on the penguins, you have like a lot of different ways to get to your penguins. So not only are you playing penguins, you're playing Lyleen. This is this is pretty great because you can Lyleen into a penguin if you really need a board clear, and you'll just absolutely wreck them if you have like 2 launchers out. 2 launchers feels really unfair. If you have penguins in the deck, you can use Egg or even Victor Strategy or Palsphere to just dig and look for penguins. So like you very consistently have a way to get access to a board clear whenever you want it. And that's a very valuable thing to have in a deck. it just ensures that, especially in this game where tempo is like pretty big right now, like you really need tempo, in my opinion, to close out games consistently. Like being able to control things on the board at a moment's notice out of nowhere, like it's very strong. So this is really impressive. I'm just like really yeah, it's pretty great. So anyways, enough glazing over. Um we see Digtoise here. Digtoise is obviously just kind of a staple in green. Uh it you actually see it's interesting because Digtoise individually doesn't have the highest win rate, but on paper it's incredibly strong. 1900, 10 souls. Typically, whenever I see a Digtoise, if you're not playing purple, it can be really difficult to get rid of. Red decks have to shoot 1900 to get rid of it, which isn't impossible, but you have to commit multiple cards to do it. And if you're playing through, or you can try and buff a pal with a bunch of gears to try and beat over it. Like if Jormantide Ignis plus 2 gears could beat over it, but then you have to play through interrupts, which may or may not be reliable. Like this deck already plays, well, taking a look at this, 2, 4, so 6, 9 interrupts. So from what I'm seeing, it looks a little on the low side, but given that you have a lot of tutors, it may not be the worst thing. I know like more. I think players are like shifting towards anywhere between 10 and 12, and then for players that really like the interrupts, they're probably going anywhere between 14, even 16. So it's yeah, I could definitely see that. But from what I'm seeing here, like this deck is pretty powerful. You have a lot of ways to win the game. You obviously can slam Digtoise. You have enough early play like cards, so like you have 2 floppy, you have 3 pangolets, you have 4 pingolets of this 3 cost, you have 4 pingolets of this 4 cost. If you wanted to play a little bit aggressive early and get some chip damage in, and then close out with like a Lyleen push on curve, you absolutely could try to do that. Obviously, in this meta, it's a little bit harder because people are playing interrupts to the moon, but it's definitely got the ability to play aggression. Like if they're playing like a really slow late game oriented strategy. So like for example, I play structures, and that's pretty late game oriented. You have to do a lot to set up. So you have the option to be the aggressor, but you also have the option to just wait it out and get to 10 souls and try to just like nuke the board over and over, and then close out the game from there. So there's definitely a lot going on here. So to just kind of go into some of the more smaller intricacies, and keep in mind this is just like face value. I don't really know the player personally. I don't know. I haven't seen any of the replays, but one of the big things I've noticed is that you have 4 of this card, the Found Egg. And what I've been seeing a lot more is players really like going second. They really want to go second. They want to draw. They want to pay 3 draw pass on the first turn, because then you're up 2 cards over someone that does nothing turn 1. And this deck, well, it plays the 2 costs. It plays this 2 cost Found an Egg. It lets you dig for all of your pieces without completely wasting your turn 1. So like if you have nothing else to play and you just see this in your opening hand, it is playable. Now whether or not the player actually does that, I won't know. I think that would be a good question to ask them. But it also has late game applications as well, because with this egg, you can dig for Digtoise, you can dig for Lyleen, and then play them on the same turn, and still have at least one soul left over for an interrupt, which is a pretty good thing. Most decks do not have that flexibility. Usually, if you're like, you know, if you're looking at like red blue decks that like red blue Chillet, for example, if you're playing Palsphere, you're not gonna play like Jormantide on the same turn. You know what I mean? Because you only have 10 souls, right? If you're playing like you can furnace into it, you know, and like do consistent draws, but you can't just like literally like out the, you know, you literally just pull a hat out of, you know, pull a rabbit out of the hat and just pop a penguin out of nowhere to do, you know, to do your game plan, because you can like literally found an egg, right? Lyleen reveals a penguin and then just launch her the penguin and you just nuke their board, and you could have literally only the egg and a launcher on board and do that, which I think is crazy. Like, you have the ability to just out of nowhere just have this really explosive play. And of course you have like other things. You have the Digtoise here. You have both Digtoises, and it's really solid. You know, you get that extra power when you need it. Like, this deck does not seem to have any issues with power. You're just consistently punching over things. You're blowing up things. Overall, I think it makes sense why this deck got third. As far as where the deck could be weak, I think there are some like areas where the deck could be weak. For example, if you're not pressuring enough early, you could lose out to mounted machine gun, like, or because I can see like if they just kind of like push you early on, or if they not push you early on, sorry, if they set up early on, let's say they're like playing like red control, and they're just able to furnace turn one. You don't really have an answer to furnace like super early, because you don't really play anything that could kill furnace until at least until this Digtoise comes out, right? So that's a potential challenge that you have to deal with. So if they furnace and then they have mounted machine gun, they're sitting on interrupts. It can be kind of rough, because then they could clear your board every turn. And I think that's also something that's like you have to be wary about if you play green, is that your pals individually on the defense are not like very high outside of Digtoise. So Digtoise is obviously your 1900, but Lyleen's only 9. Panking is only 6, right? Digtoise is 8 on the this 5 cost Digtoise is 8 on the defense. So things like shotgun, you're still susceptible to things like shotgun. You're still susceptible to things like mounted machine gun. So if they're playing like Suzaku burn control, I could see this being a bit of a problem. Like, that matchup might suck. I would just have to see more of how that deck plays. Like, I haven't seen that specific matchup, but I would imagine that matchup would probably suck a little bit. Like, anything that plays like mounted machine gun, or anything that plays like a bunch of shotguns, like that could suck. There's also no, like, I think it's also a thing like there's not a whole lot of graveyard recursion, but I don't think you need it. You know, there's 0 graveyard recursion. I let me rephrase that, because that only exists in purple right now. So if you like get really unlucky, like let's say you get rushed and like you cancel with like 3 Digtoise or something, that would kind of suck. That would kind of suck, because that's like a big part of like how you win the games. I think that's also why you have an alternate win condition where you try to control with penguins and then you drop a Pen King and then you have penguins and they can't be killed. Like, that's a potential alternate win condition. You know, you have Lyleen rushing down. So it's not like it's the end of the world if you lose your Digtoises, but it definitely, Digtoise is like one of the things that like you really want to have it, and your deck just like loses a lot. But I like the plan B. I definitely think this deck is very, very good. Would I play this in rated? given the variance that you're going to run to and rated, I feel like this is a pretty strong deck. Like, even if you play against a bunch of dragons, there's not a whole. I don't think there's going to be too many decks that are going to be playing like straight up like mounted machine gun fu. You're not going to be able to keep anything on the board ever. But at the same time, yeah, no, I just think this is just really strong. Purple, I could see purple kind of like killing Digtoise over and over, you know, with the whole Shadowbeak Hellzephyr interaction, Strike from the Darkness, things like that. But purple also requires tempo to win the game. Like it's really hard for them to win when they're behind or you're constantly resetting their board. So Penguin Launcher just makes that matchup a lot easier for you. So that's kind of just how that is. But yeah, I think I wouldn't say this deck has no weaknesses. I mean, obviously, you know, it got third. It's obviously really good. Would I play this in rated? Yes. Would I play this IRL? Probably also yes. I think this deck is really good for an IRL tournament. I would play this. But yeah, overall, very impressed with it. Um, you know, great job, Super Cativa. This is a wonderful deck. So for those who are interested in like learning how to play, I mean it's pretty basic. If you're not sure how to play it, you'd wanna I would take a stab at it. I would probably just play a lot of penguin launchers. You know, try to dig for the penguin launcher with Victor strategy if you can, or Pal Sphere, and make sure you get them on the board. That's a big part of the deck. If you don't, then you can still fall back on the Lyleen Digtoise strategy, but definitely penguin launcher is like a big part of why this deck is strong. So, yeah. So yeah, get your penguin launchers out, clear the board where you can. If you don't want to clear the board, let's say they leave a structure up, you can actually just penguin launcher buff a penguin and just attack the structure and force your opponent to make some hard decisions. Do they want to discard a card to defend that structure, or in even worst case, do they have to discard two? So you know you have a lot of you have the ability to pressure with this deck. So it's yeah, yeah, overall very good. Congratulations on your third place win, Super Cativa. And as for all the watchers, thank you for listening all the way to the end, and you have a great day. All right then. So this time around, we're going to be reviewing Vendor Hansel's red green Lyleen Digtoise deck. For this is the second deck that I'm going to be reviewing for this tournament. It got top 8. This was a really cool deck. I watched a couple of the games live with this deck, and it was really cool watching it play. I didn't think um, that some of the plays that were being made were gonna like happen the way that they did, but when I thought about it a lot, and it was actually pretty ingenious. So I really like this deck. So I decided this would be the second deck that I would review right after that first one with the Penguins. So without further ado, let me just kind of like get my initial thoughts here. Is that there is a lot of focus on board control. So there's a lot of Rush Roar. There's 4 Rush Roars in this deck. And I've seen like varying amounts in green decks. I've seen green decks play 2 copies. I've seen them play 1 copy in purple where they just grab it when they need it with Zoe strategy. I've seen 3 copies. And then obviously here we've seen 4. And 4 to me in this meta, it makes total sense. A lot of decks are playing red. A lot of decks are playing Furnace. A lot of decks are putting up structures that are very high value, and you just want to be able to like get rid of them as fast as possible. Things like mounted machine gun, like this deck is playing here, and being able to swing for 1k kind of answers a lot of those early structures. So you're not seeing a whole lot of higher costed structures like medicine bench and the or lamps, because you're not really seeing like nocturnal decks or reanimator decks as much. If you're expecting dragons, if dragons are the meta, people are playing furnace, people are playing, and people have been playing mounted machine guns. So that makes sense why Rush Roar is played as a 4 of. It's a 2 cost card, really, really cheap to play. And depending on, how that goes, you can force interrupts. Because players are going to want to defend their structures, and Rush Roar just kind of puts pressure on that. So it's really good, very aggressive, and it and it's actually quite good because let's say you have like 1 mana up, and you have, let's say, like 2 interrupts in hand, and but you only have 1 mana up, and this guy just goes Rush Roar, attack your structure, and then Digtoise with breakthrough, and now you have to choose between losing your pal and losing your structure or discarding 3 cards. So it puts a lot of pressure, and it seems like that's the theme of this deck, and it makes a lot of sense. I like the Lamball edition, being able to, like, late game, you're playing against dragons. If you're playing against dragons, most dragon decks will not play anything 3 cost or below. It's actually quite rare. And for that reason, Lamball is actually quite good, because now if they're playing like traditional red-blue dragons with lots of gears, they're going to spend a single shot rifle on this Lamball just to kill it, because they're not going to be able to kill anything else, really. There's like nothing, there's no other great targets. Like, you can kill Lyleen with the single shot rifle. Of course, you're going to save it for that if you see it, but you don't have a way to attack this Lamball and kill it otherwise. Or shotgun. You have to shotgun it. But then if you're, trying to shotgun, that means you're resetting the tempo. And by then, if they went Lamball or like first turn, second turn, and they've already been drawing cards off of it, by the time you shotgun them, they've already gotten their value off the card. So great addition in this meta. I think Lamball is incredibly strong in this kind of dragon-centric meta. I think it'll change a little bit. I think as players, like, as we start to see more varied strategies, Lamball may not be as strong. But for now, in a dragon-centric meta, that's like, it's just really good. Kativa, I'm a little bit on the fence on. Personally, I would think it would make sense if you did like floppy or Flambeau, because then you would generate your resources for Lyleen and mounted machine gun or Digtoise. Like, to me, I felt like that might be a little bit more synergistic while still having that early or low cost PAL. But I can also see, like, if you're forced to go first and you just want to have a safe attacker on turn 1, Kativa's it. So it has and then it still has the option of, just tapping and doing this. Like, you can also on turn 3, or let's say you're going second and you open Kativa plus Stone Pit, you can just Kativa Stone Pit, because that's exactly 3 mana, and then just tap and draw a card and get 3 wood. So I could kind of see the application there. I still think that Flambell or Floppy would probably be better. Maybe Flambell. Actually, I would think I would like Flambell more because mounted machine gun is so important here. But I also see the appeal of Kativa. So I think it's all right. Some other interesting choices that I've noticed is the foregoing the single shot rifle entirely and choosing Axel strategy. So for those that don't know, and I would recommend you go out and read the card, Axel strategy does the same thing as single shot rifle for the most part, but it has 2 additional effects that you can choose from if you decide you don't want to play it for that effect. So you have you have the option to choose X pals and stand them. X is equal to your number of gears, so you can restand Digtoise. Let's say you have the effect, you break through, and then you're like, you know what? I'm just gonna Axle Strategy. Now I'm gonna Axle Strategy. I'm gonna restand that Digtoise. That Digtoise still has breakthrough, by the way. So you can kill 2 pals and do double damage. It's really crazy. It's actually, yeah, it's quite crazy. And also, the choose all of your opponent's 5 or greater pals and they can't block until end of turn. I don't know how often this comes up, this last effect, but if you're playing against dragons and they're playing and you get them to like low health and they have to like use blockers to like try and like defend their life, I could see this being useful. Like they can't block, now they have to interrupt. But we're also in a heavy interrupt meta, so this may not be that this last effect may not be that strong. But I know for sure like these first 2 effects, they're quite reasonable, like really, really good. What the oh no. Alright, hold on. Let me go back. Because I clicked that card. It should take me back to the deck list, but we'll just forget that. But here in this deck, it makes a lot of sense. I like it with the Digtoise. There's no Reptyro, so since you're not playing Reptyro, you have the option to play Axle Strategy. If you play Reptyro, you should be playing Single Shot Rifle, you know, for the synergy there. But this deck doesn't play Reptyro, so Axle Strategy makes sense. The addition of Makeshift Handgun is a little bit interesting. I can see the applications, like if you're removing like early pals, so like let's say you're trying to your opponent's like, hey, I'm gonna sit here and like do the same thing you're doing. I want to assign to structures. I have a land ball out. You can't kill it with Digtoise because you can't attack it. Makeshift Handgun just kind of answers that for you, which is kind of nice. And then you also have the option of just saying, hey, you know what? My mounted machine gun wasn't enough to kill. I didn't have enough wood. Let me just slap out in this makeshift handgun. So you have a little bit of flexibility there. Personally, I would have liked it if you just played Flambell instead of Kativa, but I also see the synergy with Axle Strategy. Like if you say, hey, I'm going to play a Digtoise here, and or let's say I have a Digtoise from last turn, and you go Makeshift Handgun, Axle Strategy. Now you can restand your Digtoise that you already attacked with that turn. Like let's say it had it from last turn. The first thing you do is attack. You play Makeshift Handgun, and then you play Axle Strategy, and then you can restand it right away. Which is like for 6 mana, it's a little steep, but if it's what ends you the game, then that's what ends you the game, right? So I've also seen a few plays where Digtoise is the one being assigned to a structure because like Digtoise can't be shotgunned, it can't be single shot rifled, at least not easily. Like I mentioned it in the last deck review that like red decks can't easily out this card. They have to commit resources to do it, like more than you would on other pals. So it would be like shotgun plus something else, or more mounted machine gun ammo than you would normally use. So having this just kind of sit there and assign it to mounted machine gun or stone pit or ranch or whatever the heck you want, and just be like this big beefy thing that your opponent can't kill while you generate resources. It's not a bad strategy if you have to resort to that, and it's quite good. I mean, same with Lyleen here. Lyleen's like, ideally you'd want to attack with the Lyleen if you can. I mean, three strike is hard to ignore. A lot of people would be willing to interrupt that so that, force them to discard a card. But I could also see like, hey, I'm gonna Lyleen. I grabbed a Digtoise, so instead of attacking with the Lyleen, I'll tap the mounted machine gun on the Lyleen with the Lyleen, or tap the Lyleen with mounted machine gun, and then attack with the Digtoise with breakthrough. So you can see something like that happening. if you wanted to do that. Although that may not always happen, but it's just something to think about. I think, but overall, I think this deck um has a really good matchup in the dragons. There's plenty of pressure on structures if they decide to play Furnace. If they don't decide to play Furnace, Rush War is kind of a dead card, but if they're not playing Furnace, it also means that they have to pay full cost for the removal, and that makes Digtoise much harder to deal with because you can't like discount your shotgun or discount your single shot rifles. So Digtoise becomes a little bit harder to deal with in that regard. You don't play a whole lot of interrupts. There's only 8 in this deck, compared to the what seems to be the standard of 10 to 12. However, there's a lot of aggression here. You have Rush Roar, and then Digtoise is just massive, so maybe that just kind of makes up for it. And then, of course, you also have a lot of structures, so I kind of want to speak to that. So when it comes to structures, a lot of players are looking to destroy these structures. They don't want to leave them out. So in a way, it's almost like they have taunt. It's not necessarily like they don't have a hard taunt, but if your opponent doesn't want to ignore this either. Like if you're sitting on Digtoise, if you're sitting on a Digtoise on the board, they can't kill the Digtoise. They're going to want to kill one of these, like one of these structures. So if they attack the structure instead, and then you just like let's say they hit your stone pit, and then you just let it through, it's you pretty much just taunted them into it, and then you just play another one from your hand because it's only one cost, right? So like you have a lot of things that you could do there. So I think it's pretty cool. Like instead of playing interrupts, you just play this card and you say, "Hey, fight me! I dare you! You're gonna waste your time killing this card, because if you don't, I'm gonna run away. I'm gonna run with the game. Like I'm gonna run over. I'm gonna run you over." So really cool design there. Now, as far as like there's going to be like some differences that I do see like with other red lists. A lot of red lists play Furnace, where this one chooses Stone Pit, and I can kind of see if you're playing more aggressive and you want to be able to just replace your Stone Pit on command, or not on command, but like whenever you lose one and not lose out on too much mana, then Stone Pit is technically cheaper. Additionally, there's also the fact that a lot of people are playing for Furnace. Like they're playing to kill Furnace. So 800 power structures. So you're gonna see things like Penguin plus Penguin Launcher. You're gonna see things like Alpha Dran, especially Chillet Alpha Dran if you're preparing for dragons. They're both bigger than Furnace on the attack. So if they're bigger than Furnace and they're bigger than Stone Pit, obviously Stone Pit's going to be the easier one to replace. And if you're looking to not defend it anyways, or maybe defend it like occasionally instead of like hard defending it, then it makes sense that you would just place the Stone Pit instead because it's cheaper to replace. Now, you could make the argument that Furnace is just objectively better because of that second effect. And I wouldn't disagree with you on that. I think that's like a very like fair argument to make. And but I also think that in the context of a tournament, you also have to think about like your resource usage. So if you end up spending your wood on shotgun, you're not going to be able to spend that wood on mounted machine gun. So now you have to like choose between the two. And yeah, there are situations where you just have the shotgun in hand and you want to use it, but you also have the mounted machine gun in hand and you'd rather use that instead. And now you have to choose like which one's better. And there's situations where both are useful. Like yes, like Mountain Machine Gun is technically more efficient with the damage. Like you get more damage per wood spent, but you also have to think about the context of the game. So, like if you play Mounted Machine Gun, you have to defend it, and if you're not in a position to defend it, then you want to play Shotgun instead. So, there are some things there in play that you have to think about. And in that case, then like Furnace would be better. But it also like makes your deck a little bit more complex in that regard, because if you make the wrong play, then it could lose you the game. And that's something you also have to consider. Like when you're like in a long tournament, let's say, you're going 5 rounds of Swiss into top 8, top 4 finals. That's 8 rounds. That's a lot of critical thinking you have to do in a day or two. This was a 2-day tournament, but like let's say you're in an IRL tournament, and you have to play the whole thing out in a single day. Like Bushiroad tournaments, I've done a few myself. Is like they're like pretty much like 10 rounds, like 7 rounds of Swiss, and then into top, or 6 rounds, 7 rounds of Swiss into top cut. It's not a walk in the park to play for that long, without without being able to take a break for food. You have to wake up early in the morning, so it's like like all of those things can like really take a toll on you mentally and physically. And why that matters is because in 90% of your games, tight technical play is going to decide the game. It's not going to be like, that clutch factor, or, whatever mind games you did. Like, if you want to consistently top tournaments and win tournaments, like tight technical play and consistent technical play is what you should be striving for. And being able to simplify your game plan into doing only what matters is a part of that. So yeah, I can see like, hey, let's do Furnace versus Stone Pit. And technically Furnace is the objectively better choice, but for the sake of simplicity, Stone Pit works. And there's nothing wrong with it. So I totally understand. I don't know if that's like the player's reasoning for it, but that would probably be my reasoning if I had to choose between the two. Like, hey, I would prefer to have the more consistent, simple game plan that I can do every single time, as opposed to the other more complex game plan that is better, but requires a lot more like thought and mental processing to do. Because in a tournament, you don't have infinite time to make decisions. You only have 30 minutes to play around, and you don't have the luxury of being able to just like wait out and think out every possible outcome. So sometimes the simple plan is the most consistent and therefore the best for that tournament. So pros and cons. Pros and cons. You have to be willing to weigh the pros and cons for it. So yeah, looking at the list as a whole, I definitely love the strategy of board pressure. Being able to pressure structures with Rush Roar. You can use Mounted Machine Gun. Like Lamball plus Mounted Machine Gun is really strong against dragons. And you just want to kill pals. You have Digtoise as a closer. It's really cool because then you could Digtoise as a strategy. If you've been sitting on Digtoise for several turns because you've slowed down the game with Mounted Machine Gun, you're clearing their board, they have no tempo, so it's really hard for them to kill you. You're able to drag the game out a little longer. You can get a second Digtoise out, and then you can Axle strategy them both with Breakthrough and then just completely annihilate your opponent. So that's like something like really, really cool. So overall, I'm very impressed with this deck. Really like how this went. And yeah, that's yeah, that'll be my review for the deck. I think would I play this IRL? Absolutely. I think this is a great deck. I think it's very like good. There is a slight weakness in the fact that if you're playing against red blue gears, your rush wars are effectively dead. They you, they effectively are no better than a vanilla at that point. And at that point, you'd rather just play like floppy or Flambeau. I personally think that playing either floppy or Flambeau would be better than playing Cativa, but I also don't know like what the testing results were. So I don't know the player's reasoning behind the Cativa choice. There's probably something that they know that I don't. In fact, I would probably say for certain that there is something that they know and I don't. Like I could see applications where you say, "Hey, I'm going to play Cativa, and then I'm going to play Stone Pit, and I'm going to play Digtoise." That's exactly 9. So, like, let's say Lamball, Stone Pit, Digtoise, all on the same turn. That's 9 mana, and you're able to like draw your card and still pressure the board, and then still have 1 mana left over for an interrupt, and that's like pretty big. Like the name of the game when it comes to green is efficiency. Everything they do is like really really efficient as far as like mana cost goes, and it kind of plays into that theme. They like to ramp. They like to like get more resources, and many of the cards that they play, it's always like you're gonna get tremendous value for your mana. So yeah, overall, pretty impressed with this deck. I do like it. I want to say congratulations to Vendor Hansel for making top 8 with this deck. This is definitely a great deck. I think it's a really good deck for a tournament. I think it's a really good deck IRL. I hope to see how this deck will evolve in the future as the meta develops a little bit more. And and over time, what would a strategy like this look like, where it's just constantly board pressuring, like as new cards come out, the new sets come out, like board pressure seems to be like the name of the game here, and getting tempo, and this deck does that really well. So yeah, excellent, excellent, great job, Vinder Hansel, and congratulations. And for everyone that's watching, thank you. Okay, deck number 3 in this top 8 list. Uh, this is the first place winner. So this is Pingu's blue purple dragons, and it goes a little bit outside the norm from what I've seen from other blue purple dragons. I've seen that blue purple is playing Astagon, and they tend to play other things as well. But this deck, it just pretty much plays Zoe Strategy Strike and then the interrupts, and that's it for purple. And the rest is blue, and of course Alpha Dran here, honorary blue dragon. Yeah. But yeah, it's excellent. It's a really strong deck. There's a lot of synergies here that you would not expect. There's a ton of flexibility thanks to the Zoe strategy. This deck is really, really good at doing at several things, really. So let me just kind of like get into it. So you have this is, you know, the first deck that I'm reviewing for in this series that contains dragons. The previous 2 decks did not have any dragons, and so I really wanted to take my time and kind of like think about this and talk about this. Like this deck plays on curve so well. If you go first, you have a threat on turn 2. You have Alpha Dran on 4. You have Pingwit uh, for later in the game. But if you want to play early to just draw a card and put pressure on the board, you can. If you're going second, you still have those options, but you also have the option of playing Blind Chillet on 5, which is pretty good. A lot of games can be decided right then and there off a Blind Chillet if you just hit. you just get so much like you just snowball out of control. You know, you chill it into say Jormantide, that's obviously on the high end, but if you even if you like mid roll and get like an Alpha Dran Aqua or an Alpha Dran, it's like it's still really good. And then if you low roll and you hit like one of your other cards, well, every card in this deck has purpose. So you could low roll and hit like an Antique Mirror, and then you still get to draw a card. Like it would be one card that draws into another. You have a Roar Guide, which can also turn into a draw if you need it, or you can like stack a Lucky on top, or you can combine with Chillet. I imagine Aurora Guide's really just there to combo with Chillet. So and of course, you could also just like hit Penguin Launcher. You can add that to hand. You could add Strife from the Darkness. You can hit a Pal Sphere and draw more cards. It's like there's no really bad hits because everything in this deck you play is like just really high quality. The only card that's like the only cards that aren't particularly high quality are the interrupts because they're just interrupts. They're not really there to do anything else. But even then, they're critical to the game plan. So they may not be quote unquote high quality game changers like Jormantide might be or Penguin Launcher might be, but they're still really good to draw when you hit them. So overall, like Chillet as a card, just insane. I think Bushiroad like kind of messed up when printing this card. They really overtuned this. But another thing that this deck does a little differently from some blue lists and probably from blue lists I've seen on the website is the constant use of Penguin Launcher, and Zoe strategy. So this is a trend that I have seen on some Japanese deck lists on Twitter, where whenever they play blue purple, they do play this engine where they play like Penguin and Penguin Launcher, and then they grab back the launcher or grab back the Penguin with Zoe strategy, and just nuke, and then with that one play where you just play Zoe strategy into a Penguin, you make your opponent discard a card, they lose their board to launcher, and then you get to draw a card. It's like a huge swinging card economy that you can leverage to snowball the game. So that like there's obviously like very good. It's obviously a very good like cohesive engine to kind of put together and play. And then Zoe strategy, you can grab anything. You can grab a Chillet if you want. If you have a Roar Guide in hand, you could grab a Jormantide. Although you can't play it on the same turn if you're hard casting. So you have to keep that in mind. So ideally, you'd probably just want to Zoe strategy Aurora Guide into Chillet, but then that's exactly 10 mana. So maybe that might be a little like hey, do you really want to do that? But overall, there's just like some really good stuff here. I really can't really say much more else other than this deck is just insanely good. It's just there's a lot of high value plays here. Almost everything you do here just gets you like one card over your opponent in some way, shape, or form. The only exception is like maybe like Evadran Aqua, but even then, it's like this is still just a really good body to hit with Chillet. So I've some things that I would say like when it comes to like this versus red blue is that red blue has access to shotgun and it has access to single shot rifle, but it's not like purple is lacking in that regard either because you have or not purple yeah, blue purple. It's not like blue purple is lacking because you still have Penguin Launcher. And then on top of it, you have Zoe strategy to kind of reload your Penguin Launcher with more penguins. So you're not exact. It's almost like you're playing like 8 penguins in the deck. It's it or up to 8. You don't necessarily have to use Zoe strategy on penguin. You have that flexibility to do whatever you want. So it's not like you're really lacking in terms of board clear as long as you can get 2 penguin launchers out. I think 2 penguin launchers is like really unfair. And And honestly, that's probably the one. If I had to disagree with one thing on the deck, I think it's like 3 versus 4 Penguin Launcher. But I also have to look at the card statistic. I haven't seen like the individual statistic on what's 3 Penguin Launcher versus 4, but I would probably think that 4 Penguin Launchers is pretty powerful because you just want to see 2 every game. I think if you saw 2 every game, you would just like be a massive threat all the time, and it's like no matter what you run into, you're probably going to be able to kill it in some way, shape, or form. And then, of course, for things that Penguin Launcher can't kill or it's not efficient to kill, you have Strike from the Darkness. And this is like really good tech. You can kill Jormantides or Jormantide Ignis. You can kill Digtoise. You know, we just saw 2 other Digtoises in top 8. So yeah, Strike from the Darkness is really, really good here. And then of course you still have the option of butchering your pal with Zoe's strategy. So you could, butcher. Um, let's say like you can't kill a Digtoise and you have to butcher a Chillet to do it. Like, oh well, you have that option. So that's really nice. I'm actually kind of interested. I'm kind of curious about this Antique Mirror versus Pal Sphere because you play a 2-2 split. It seems like you want to have the flexibility in case you draw one or the other, because either way you're just drawing a card. Like this essentially turns your deck into a 48 card deck instead of a 50 card deck. But then Pal Sphere also like gives you a lot. So gives you a lot of draws. It goes +2 at the cost of 4 mana, which is not nothing. It's not like it's a free or 1 mana like Antique Mirror, but it does get you something. So makes me wonder, like, hey, how good is Antique Mirror versus Pal Sphere? There's obviously pros and cons to each because Antique Mirror curves out your hand a lot better. So let's say you have 6 mana, but you only have a Penguin that's playable and a bunch of interrupts, or a Penguin Launcher. You can just Penguin Launcher Antique Mirror and then save 1 mana for an interrupt, which is like pretty good. So there's like some good curving there. Like I am seeing like the more of this, like, hey, we're gonna play these 1-cost cards, and these 1-cost cards like curve out your hands really well. Yeah, just like with the last deck with Stone Pit and the Berry Farm. So it's definitely not a terrible. It's not a bad option. I'm just wondering, like, what are the pros and cons? I have not tested Palsphere myself versus Antique Mirror, like this 2-2 split. So I'd probably want to test it out myself and see how that feels, and see if which one is technically better for the deck. But overall, I mean, this deck is great. There's really not much to tell you other than this deck slaps. It has answers to a lot of things. Um, the only thing is, I probably personally will want to play for Rocket Launcher, but I could see like it being cloggy. So like if you draw all your rocket launchers, it just feels bad because then you're not drawing interrupts, you're not drawing your chillets. So and there's a lot of board pressure here with the Elfin Duran, especially if you get your Penguin launchers early. Like Elfin Duran becomes pretty much a late game structure, or early and late game structure. You can even kill pals with the Elfin Duran if you just Penguin launcher it, which is kind of cool. It like you don't play like a billion gears though, so it's not like red blue gears where you can pump an Alpha Duran to like 17 and try to contest a Jormantide. Uh, but it's doable. It's doable if you manage to get all 3 Penguin launchers out. This but yeah, no, the primary use for Penguin launcher is definitely going to be, we're going to pump a Penguin, and then if you don't pump a Penguin, you can even pump a Jormantide, and then the Jormantide will beat over Jormantide Ignis because Ignis is 17 on the defense. And let's say you have 2 Penguin launchers, which is why I feel it's unfair. Like if you're playing 2 Penguin launchers, um, you know, you're now like what, 18, 2000. So that's 100 over Digtoise, which is pretty big. That's why I like also am like really partial towards having 4 penguin launchers instead of 3, but there's also Strike from the Darkness. So Strike from the Darkness will also answer like those massive pals, as well as Zoe's strategy. So yeah, lots of combo potential with the Chillet, with the Aurora Guide, with the Zoe strategy. Use Zoe strategy into Chillet, to just drop a Chillet on them. You can just Zoe strategy into Penguin to Penguin launcher them. Zoe strategy to grab an interrupt. Zoe strategy to get a Jormantide. So there's really like I don't know. There's just you have a whole lot of flexibility with how you want to play this deck, and it really just comes down to player skill. So it makes sense. Like, hey, this guy not only did he play like a very high skill, very powerful deck, he got first with it. So like Pingu, you're really good at the game. Like it just demonstrates like mastery of the deck, mastery of the choices that you have to make in game, because this is not the easiest deck to pilot when you have so many options available to you. But at the same time, because you have all those options available to you, if you make the right play every single time, you're going to win almost every single game. So yeah, it makes sense. So this is, congratulations, Pingu. You did very well this tournament. I hope to see you in the next one, and I hope to see you on the ladder. And all right, for the next deck, this is going to be your standard red blue dragons, with mounted machine gun. So I don't think this is particularly a bad deck. This is the meta. This is like, if I were to look at a meta deck, this is it, right? When we're talking about win rates and whatnot, if you go to the meta tab here and you just look at meta decks, red blue Chillet sits at the top, with the highest number of games played, highest win rate. Like, this is pretty much it. And it's no surprise that a deck like this would make top cut. So yeah, this is pretty standard as it gets. You're gonna play Chillet, you're gonna play dragons, you're gonna play, let's see, there's 8 interrupts? No, 12, because there's 4 Fox Parks as well. So that's something that, and then of course 4 Reptiro. You have 4 Reptiro for all of your gears. You have single shot rifle, you have pump action shotgun, you have furnaces. Like, this is pretty much cookie cutter as it gets. The only exception is like the mounted machine gun. I think that's a relatively recent addition to red blue dragons, and pretty much a much needed one. Because if you play, like, let's say you're playing the mirror, and they're playing like Jormantide, Ignis, single shot rifle will not answer Jormantide, Ignis, or Jormantide by itself. But for those situations, instead of single shot rifle, you could just play mounted machine gun, tap a pal, and kill their pal. And then you don't have to interact with their interrupts. You don't have to interact with the opponent in that regard, or have to attack when you don't want to attack. You could just kill their pals without having to attack, and that's really strong. And mounted machine gun is like, seems to be growing as a card. I think Suzaku Gun Control that Jason was playing kind of like popularized it a bit, or put more awareness on the card itself, the mounted machine gun. And it makes sense, because mounted machine gun is a really scary card once you get an engine of wood going. Not to mention, you have cards like Lamball. Like, this deck is really good playing into dragons as well. Like, you play the mirror, you play Lamball, you play mounted machine gun, and now they can't hit the Lamball unless they use one of their removal tools. So instead, they're going to have to attack the mounted machine gun if they just wanted to attack. And that could be quite annoying. Especially when you're playing so many interrupts. You're playing 12 interrupts, and you have plenty of card draw. You have Alpha Dran Aqua, you have Jormantide. No Pal Sphere, which is which I think is quite interesting. I thought like more players would be playing Palsphere, but out of the two dragon decks that I noticed, Pingu's deck, for example, only plays 2 copies of Palsphere. So it makes me wonder, like, is Palsphere actually a good card or not? Like, or was it just flavor? Was it just the flavor of the month as the deck was originally being built, and it's starting to phase out as the meta develops? So that could also be a thing because it does technically conflict. If you play Palsphere, you can't play Jormantide if you draw into it. You can't play Relaxosaurus if you draw into it. Uh, and and if you want to play pump action shotgun, you're going to have to use your primitive furnace effect. And so now you have to choose between spending your wood on furnace or mounted machine gun. So or Reptyro, because Reptyro also has the ability to consume 3 wood. So you have to consider that as well. No Aurora guide in this list, so every Chillet is going to be blind, and that's something that you also have to consider. You basically, if you want to get like a big Chillet play going, it's unlikely to happen. There's also no Elphadran, so there's no really early pressure, which don't necessarily hate, but I don't necessarily love either. I think Elphadran is a really, really strong card early. I think Relaxosaurus is a little bit weak, because it's susceptible to shotgun. Like this is exactly 12 shotgun hits it for 12. So like if you're playing the mirror or you're just playing against another red deck in general, like Relaxosaurus might just get shot. And at that point, I don't know. I kind of would like the idea of just playing Elphadran more than I would Relaxosaurus. But I also think Relaxosaurus like has other uses too, like against Digtoise, and when we just saw 2 other Digtoise in top 8, prior to this review, Relaxosaurus can tap down Digtoise and just leave him there, and there's nothing the Digtoise players can do about it, other than try to kill the Relaxosaurus. But definitely like it's not easy to do in that matchup. Like Relaxosaurus is just very, very good here in that context. Unfortunately, it doesn't do well like against other things. Like maybe like I could see it if they like in the mirror, if they have a Chillet out and then you Relaxosaurus to Chillet, and then that allows you to attack the furnace, and then they can't stand the Chillet if you're playing the mirror. Or let's say you're playing against another deck like Lamball or like gun control or some variant of it, where you just want to tap something down so they can't assign, and that allows you to safely attack a structure and force out interrupts. So that's some without giving them the option of untapping and using that structure again the next turn. So there's some merits to Relaxosaurus. Reptyro, it's pretty cookie cutter. You just play it, you get 3 wood, you just you dig top 5, and you play a single shot rifle or shotgun. Overall, I would say this deck is all right for a dragon deck. It is the meta. It's very cookie cutter. I think if I would I play this IRL? I would give this. I would not play this IRL. As much as it is meta, as much as it is cookie cutter meta, I wouldn't play this IRL. And you might be asking like, why? It's like cookie cutter. It's great. It's a powerful deck. Why wouldn't you play this IRL? I think it's because it's just so predictable. That is one of the things about a cookie cutter deck, is that it's really simple to pilot. It's got high value plays. There's a lot that you can do with them because they're just so strong, and you can easily get yourself through Swiss with them. But once you're once you're up against like really, really good players that know your deck inside and out, it's going to be really tough because you're playing a cookie cutter list, and they probably know. There's a likelihood that your opponent might know more about your list than you do. And like it's like hard, like you can't just like convince yourself like, hey, I'm better than my opponents. Like you have to always assume that you can win against anybody, but you can also lose against anybody at any time. So you have to be vigilant in understanding like not just your deck, but also like the text that you kind of put on there. The mounted machine gun is an excellent addition. I definitely like this. I just kind of I don't know. I'm not particularly like I don't know. I just think it's a little too cookie cutter for my taste. That like I but I understand it. I understand why this deck got to top cut. Obviously the player is really good. You know, getting to top 8 in such a large tournament like this isn't easy. And even if you are playing meta, because you know, in the later rounds you're also going to be playing against other meta, so you have to outskill them in the mirror. But for me, I'd probably change the deck a little bit. I wouldn't play as is, but I would play Red Blue Dragons in a tournament. I probably just wouldn't play this exact list. I'd probably, if it were me, I'd probably cut the Relaxosaurus so that I'd be less susceptible to shotgun. And I'd probably, if I were to like think about it, I think I'd probably tech in like replace Lamball with Fox Park's harness, take out the mounted machine guns for regular Fox Parks. You know, you play Fox Parks, the whole Fox Parks engine, because you already play the interrupt, right? And then now you can play this gear that can't be interacted with, that can't attack it. And then if you want to shoot something for 400 or 700 or even 1400, you could just play a 2 cost and it's swing. And that is hyper efficient. Plus you have the ability to like tap something to the moon because you're playing extra gears now. So now you can pressure things. You can play for free off Reptyro, and then Reptyro into 2 cost Fox Parks, and then you know just kind of burn things. It's like all right. Like that's how if I were to pilot Red Blue Dragons, that would be how I would do it. Uh, but either way, despite like I might disagree with this, it's still a very good deck, and it's obviously piloted by a very good player. So you know, congratulations, KP, on your top cut, and hope to see you at the next tournament. Okay, here's the next Red Blue deck, and it's from the tournament, and this actually got second place. So Grim Dimension piloted this deck, Red Blue Dragons, and this is also pretty much in line with a lot of other lists. There's some differences from the last Red Blue list that I kind of want to speak towards or speak to because these differences really matter. There are like a couple of tech choices here. It seems like this deck is really built to answer a variety of different scenarios. So you only play 2 Relaxosaurus instead of 4. You only play 2 Alpha Drans, where other decks might play 3 or 4. And then when it comes to the interrupts, let's see, you play 4, you play 8, you play 10, and then you play another 4. So a total of 14 interrupts. So that's, again, a little bit on the high end, but that seems to be the case for dragons. So dragons generally will play more, because their engine is a little smaller, they have room for more interrupts. And this is also the first list I've seen in the top 8 cut that plays both regular Jormantide and Jormantide Ignis. So let's kind of get into this. This is like pretty cool. Like you have a lot of like varying ratios here. Like there's a lot of 2-ofs. You have Alpha Dran. You have the the 2 split Jormantides, only 2 Relaxosaurus, and only 2 Reptyro. And then you also have 2 Grappling Gun, 2 Mounted Machine Gun, 2 Palsphere. So it feels like this deck is trying to do a little bit of everything, and depending on what scenario you run into, you have some type of answer that you can kind of pull out of your hat, and that's quite strong. It's quite strong. You could argue that maybe you're trying to do too much at once, but in a deck like this where the core is just so strong, it's having if your core is just so strong that you can beat like just about 90% of the board and win 60% of the time just by default. Like the tech choices here are really going to decide like how you play, whether or not you top and or even whether or not you win. And I think this is like a big thing here where you have, depending on what's happening in the game in that particular moment, you have an answer for it. And it's not like you're lacking in cards. Like dragons tend to play like fairly conservatively. They don't like they don't vomit their whole hand on the board like aggro players might. They tend to play very high value cards, one or two at a time, and slowly build up the tempo from there. So you have things like, you don't have a roar guide, but it's fine because you played Chillet, because Chillet's going to get you a card either. You're just looking for a card. You're not necessarily trying to consistently high roll, but you have enough targets in your deck to high roll consistently, or on the occasionally. I wouldn't say like every single time, because roar guide would guarantee it every single time. But here you just want to be able to high roll just enough. And then on top of that, you could just draw the rest and be okay with it. You could draw your interrupts. They're going to be high value cards. You can draw Grappling Gun. Grappling Gun is not the greatest card to draw because hard casting Grappling Gun doesn't feel great. But if you draw into, like, let's say you draw into a Reptyro, and then that gets you a Grappling Gun, well, then that's a whole different story. Then you got to play for free. And then you have so I could see like, hey, you're only playing 2 Grappling Guns instead of 4, because you don't necessarily want to draw it all the time. You would prefer to play it cheaper if you can. So Primitive Furnace, Reptyro. So you'd want to be able to do that. So it makes sense. Like, you don't want to flood your hand with Grappling Guns, but you definitely want your single shot rifle, pump action shotgun. That's pretty standard. I am seeing mounted machine gun here as a 2 of. That's exactly the same as the other list, the other red-blue list. And it seems like mounted machine gun is a common theme. It's just a really strong structure, being able to just answer boards. So you just have, but yeah, overall, I think it's fairly straightforward based on what's happening in the game. And this is like the distinct differences between the last one is like the last red-blue dragon deck was very cookie cutter, versus this one, it's a lot more varied, but you have answers for everything. So there's a lot more pressure on the player to make the right decision at the right time. So, and obviously it takes a very good player to do that. So Grim Dimension, major props to you. Congratulations on your second place. As far as would I play this IRL, I think I would. I would probably change a couple of things. This is probably what I would closer to what I'm looking for if I were to ever play Red Blue Dragons, but at the same time, I probably wouldn't play Relaxosaurus. I think if I had to choose between Relaxosaurus and, say, a different card, I'd probably pick a different card. But I understand like why Relaxosaurus is strong, so I don't think it's necessarily a bad card. It's just not my preference. I think I would rather play like the whole Fox Parks engine, like I kind of mentioned in the last one, in the last review. I think I'd probably want to. I think for Palsphere maybe better instead of the Grappling Gun, but I also think Grappling Gun's really good defensively. So it's kind of rough, because if you Grappling Gun your pals and then they get shot up with mounted machine guns, like then the Grappling Gun's practically dead on the board. Like you pretty much like I think it like wrecks weaker decks where they might not have that type of board clear. Whereas whereas stronger decks that do have consistent board clears, they play mounted machine gun, or let's say you grappling gun, and then you're playing against purple. They strike from the darkness. Now it just kind of feels like your grappling gun's sitting there. So that's something to just kind of consider. So that's probably like one of the things. If I were to change something in the deck, I'd probably take this out and take out the Relaxosaurus and play like Fox Parks Engine. If I were to make that adjustment, because I think Fox Parks is a little bit more flexible since you can split your damage a little bit more, and then it's very low cost that the two cost Fox Parks, but it's not necessarily bad. I think they both have their merits. I think in this current meta where everyone is like throwing mounted machine guns, I would um you could probably make the argument that you drop the two grappling guns for two more PAL spheres. So that's an option as well. So and then just like only use your furnaces on single shot rifle and pump action, and then Reptyro if it stays alive. So yeah, they're overall this deck is incredibly good, regardless of like my personal differences. It obviously takes a very good pilot because of all the variety. Because remember, there's no graveyard recursion in this game unless you're playing purple. So your limited number of Alpha Drans and your limited number of Relaxosauruses, you have to be very intelligent in when and how you play them, as well as your Jormantides. Like you can't just willy nilly just play them on curve and assume you're going to win the game. Especially if you're playing the mirror, because if you're playing the mirror, they're going to interrupt you. They're going to have answers. So so you have to you have to know what you're doing. So I would say that this is a fair, despite being the strongest deck archetype, despite being red blue dragon's highest win rate, it is deceptively hard to play. At least this variant, and for that, but it also has the highest ceiling. So it's very obvious that with this placement, and I'm really excited to see the replays for this deck. I think the replays for this deck are going to be really interesting to view because the decision making is so layered and complex when both players are playing very strong decks, because you have to consider what how each card applies, and since you have a limited number of those tech cards, it's not like you slam 4 Reptyro and you could willy-nilly just play Reptyro whenever you want and get away with it. You have to be intelligent. And so yeah, I'm very curious. I'm excited to see the replays on this, and yeah, overall, great deck. Congratulations on your second place, Grim. You played very well, and look forward to seeing you at the next one. Okay, here we go again with another red-blue dragon list, and this one is different from any of the other ones that I've seen so far. You think, you look at these and it's like a dime a dozen, but this is actually the only red-blue list I've seen so far that doesn't play Chillet, and that's crazy to me. That is absolutely crazy to me. Just drop the Chillet entirely and just play 8 Jormantides. So this has got me like this. I have my eyes on this deck. This is actually really cool, and it got 4th place. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. You would think like, hey, like Chillet is so powerful and it's what makes a deck. It turns out like just this shell of, hey, we're gonna play these giant Jormantides and having gears to buff them, like it's, and then of course you have some control elements. You have the Relaxosaurus here. You're obviously playing 12 interrupts here. You're playing Flambell, which then plays really well into mounted machine gun. And then, of course, you obviously play your gear lineup. You play 3 grappling, which makes sense because if you're playing like 8 Jormantides, you want to be able to stand them as often as possible. They become like defensive blockers on top of your defensive wall, on top of your like interrupt walls. And Yeah, overall, I'm fairly impressed. I think there's a lot going on here that I kind of want to like kind of speak to. Like, it's very much towards structure control, and that's literally the name of the deck here. Red blue board control. It's fairly similar to. It's almost like it's a different flavor of that Digtoise board control that I reviewed, Wilderhansel's deck, um, but dragon flavored, and I'm fair. I like it. I like it. I fuck with this. So getting into the list, we have four of this ruby, and four of this ruby to assign to a structure to give something 400 power till the end of the turn. Quite strong. You can use this to buff Jormantide Ignis. You can use this to buff like Relaxosaurus, make it 1600 power. And you get this like almost like this pseudo like, hey, I get this dual purpose gear plus draw card, or gear plus kill a card with mounted machine gun. It's like it's really really cool. I like the use of Ruby here. It's yeah, I'm really impressed. Really impressed. And then if if you really need like a chump blocker, you can put a grappling gun on the Ruby. Although I don't think you'd ever do that. You'd probably just want to use it on your Jormantides. But if that ever came up as an option, you have nothing better to do, then Ruby's there. You can always use Ruby as a chump blocker. Standard, you have standard four single shot, four pump action shotgun. Interestingly enough, I think it's also because you play Furnace that you play this lineup. You could make the argument that you could play like an Axle strategy instead. Like I where and then you only use primitive furnace to buff the pump action shotgun and discount that, and then the Axle strategy will let you just like triple attack with Jormantide Ignis if it got to stay alive. So you could like, oh, Jormantide Ignis, let's say it stayed alive for a whole turn. Jormantide Ignis, pay 3, restand it, swing again, and then Axle strategy again, and then you get to restand it again. It's like pretty crazy. Like, yeah, it has the potential to be wild, is what I'm saying. But even if but the deck doesn't play that, so I'm not gonna like worry about the hypotheticals. I just want to look at it at face value. This deck slaps. It guns things down. You play Flamvel, which is, I think if you play Mounted Machine Gun, you should play Flamvel. I think it's just really good overall. If you're playing any wood-based strategy, Flamvel's it. Flamvel, you just want to play that card. It's just way too good. Like, you would think, like, hey, it only just gets you 2 wood. 2 wood for a Mounted Machine Gun is 1,000 damage to a pal. That's not nothing. That's actually quite a bit. So like if if they're flooding the board, let's say you're playing like another Mounted Machine Gun, like gun control, and they have like land balls out and stuff, you can just play Flamel, uh, assign Mounted Machine Gun, kill both, and all of that for 3 mana in the late game. So it's quite a good card. I think it's very efficient for what it does in this particular deck. Definitely the 2 Relaxosaurus. I do agree with this. I think Relaxosaurus just dies too quickly to shotgun. It dies to single shot rifle. So if you're expecting red blue dragons in this meta, you don't want to be playing too many cards that are susceptible to it. But Relaxosaurus is still good against Digtoise, so you still want to have at least one. So two here. I agree with the use of 2 here. Maybe you could go up to 3 because you don't have like Chillet. You don't have that extra source of draw, but then you also play Stone Pit. So maybe you do have that extra source of draw. So maybe the whole point of this deck is to really just like get as much board control as you can. Like, you generate a billion advantage off of these structures. Use them. You clear the board with your effects, pump action shotgun, single shot rifle. You defend your structures with interrupts, and then you close out the game with the Jormantides. Overall, this is not bad. I like this deck. Would I play this IRL? Sure. Yeah, I think I would. If I did not have Chillets. And that's we could argue left and right about this all day. I think like Chillet versus non-Chillet, I think Chillet is still better. Like just the ability to on curve potentially win the whole game if you high roll it is just way too powerful to not do. And at worst, it's a draw one. So I don't necessarily, but I see the appeal. I see the appeal of just playing like this kind of like build your base with Stone Pit, with Furnace, and then like gun them down with Mounted Machine Gun. I think if the point of the list is to generate wood for these control elements, you probably want to play one more Mounted Machine Gun just in case. But I also could see like, hey, you have 12 interrupts, so it may not be hard to defend. I don't know. I have to see the replays. I have to see the replays. I would think that it might be hard to defend because Alpha Drain kills Mounted Machine Gun in the mirror pretty quickly if you can't defend it. Chill it plus any gear will buff it to 1100 and kill this. Jormantides will kill this, obviously. Relaxosaurus can kill this. So the whole dragon package, the whole dragon like gear package could just has an out to the Mounted Machine Gun. So I would have to see like how that plays out. I think the whole point though is to make sure if you're playing the mirror, especially, that they don't even have a board to pressure you with. Like they would have to hard cast everything from hand because they can't keep a board longer than one turn. I think that's the whole point of this deck. And it seems to be well equipped to do that. So yeah, I mean I can review these red blue lists all day. Would I play this in a tournament IRL? Probably not. Probably not. And particularly because if I'm playing board control, I want to be able to control the board like without having to defend it as often. So that's also a thing. Like if I have to constantly discard cards to defend it, like yeah, you play 12 interrupts, but if that's your only way of defending your board, that could be a problem. That could be a problem. Because you might fall. There are games where you're just going to fall behind, and you're like your board's going to get cleared. Your things are going to get shot. That's just the nature of the game. And being able to recover from that is really important. And if your only way to defend yourself is through interrupts, it might be a little too hard to do. Like it, but especially for structures, because if structures is the name of the game, this deck seems to live and die by the structures. So a lot has to go into defending them. And if I were to play a structure-based deck, I would argue dropping 2 rubies for 2 more interrupts. So you would only play 2 rubies instead of 4, and you would play 2 more interrupts to try and defend your structures more. That's probably how I would adjust this deck if I were to play it IRL. But I'd also probably just not even do all that. I think I'd probably just play the Fox Parks engine because you already play the Fox Parks. You already play the Fox Parks interrupt, but overall, it's still a really good deck. I think it's a really good flavor, a really good take on the deck. Especially if you're a red blue dragon player and you do not have Chillet, this is solid. This is a very good deck, and Modular got 4th with this. So like it's obviously it takes a great player to do this, and I'm curious to see how the replays play out because I could be totally wrong on all my assumptions on this deck. But I'm not going to know until I actually do the replay analysis. So that's something I really want to like get to is like we're reviewing all these different flavors of red blue dragons. But all of my assumptions are being done at face value. So once we get into the replay analysis, then I could actually see how the different flavors of this archetype actually pan out. So in any case, good deck. Congratulations on your fourth place finish, modular, and hope to see you at the next tournament. Alrighty, so we are going into this is the second to last list of the top 8. This was piloted by Mimizuku, and it looks like it placed it placed fifth or eighth, so it went to top 8 and then lost, but still made it there. So still really solid deck. This is red purple control. And this is actually a pretty interesting take on it. Your PAL lineup is Bushi Menasting for the Lucky Pals, which is the first I've seen. Obviously, it's early on in the game. You don't see a whole lot of decks playing like Bushi Menasting. I think it's incredibly rare, and it's a very unique deck because of that. And it's kind of cool because you have 4 Lucky Pals dedicated to this interrupt that you can actually do other things, and because it's not dedicated to the core game plan, it's dedicated to defending, but it still has the option of like being able to play itself, attack, add itself back to hand, and then of course menacing is not the core of the game plan. So unlike the other Lucky Pals and decklists that we've seen where the Lucky Pals define the deck, like Chillet, Digtoise, Lyleen, the Jormantides, you actually see these strictly utility based Lucky Pals. And these strictly utility based Lucky Pals, they're not necessarily bad. They have their uses. And especially if you're really like metagaming, where like you don't expect, like for example, Red Blue Dragons plays a lot of Relaxosaurus, but Relaxosaurus in the mirror isn't the best card. It dies to shotgun. It can't tap down Jormantides. The targets you can tap with Relaxosaurus is limited. So Relaxosaurus is now a weaker card, so therefore it is played less, allowing cards like Menasting to come forward. So Menasting, for those that have never played the purple into dragon matchup, if you play a Menasting, it'll get immediately tapped down by a Relaxosaurus, and you'll just feel bad. But if people are playing less Relaxosaurus, then the Menasting's actually kind of good, and and you have like the Lyleen Noctier. You can res the Menasting whenever you need it, which is really really strong. And then, of course, you have the ability to res Leespunk, although you don't play Shadowbeak. So Leespunk is actually interesting here because if you're going second and your opponent attacks with, let's say they go Lamball turn 1 and attack, or they play like a turn 1, or they do nothing turn 1, you can pressure them with Leespunk. You just, instead of just drawing and passing, you can actually put yourself in the driver's seat and play the Leespunk and swing. And a lot of the times, they're not going to kill the Leespunk right off. So you're probably going to get... So there's a good chance where you play Leespunk turn 1. If you're going second, you swing, you get a damage, they don't kill it, and then you untap it and you swing it in, you get 2 damage out of this card, and your opponent still has to answer it somehow. So they're going to have to discard at some point. Or better yet, they play a 200 cost PAL that's not Kativa, or 200 power PAL that's not Kativa, and then you crash your Leespunk into it, and then they have, not only do they lose their PAL, they lose a card in hand. So it's like absolutely cracked when that happens. So it's probably like best case scenario if you're not shadow beaking it. Overall, I think this list is it's actually got a lot going on. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. So, going into the interrupt count, it's 12 interrupts, but 4 of them are lucky. So that means you have a lot more room for other things. Since they're kind of like dual, you have a dual purpose card here. You're playing 4 Kativa and 4 Lamball, and 4 Lee's Punk, so you have a ton of early game. Like this is aggro as hell. Like your curve is on the low end here. It's Kativa, Lamball, Lee's Punk into Menasting. Like most of your pals are playable within the first 3 to 4 turns of the game. And then if you want to Lyleen knocked on, like close, like once you hit 10 souls, then you could do that as well. But it's for good reason, because you play a lot of structures. 4 mounted machine gun, 4 stone pit, 4 furnace, and then 4 Zoe strategy to get back your dudes. So this is actually a really cool setup where you can let's say like you have like Lee's Punk in the grave. You can Zoe strategy into Lee's Punk, play the Lee's Punk, and then tap it for furnace or mounted machine gun or whatever. And then they have a choice. If they board clear you, they discard a card. But by that point, you've already gotten your value out of the Lee's Punk and the Zoe strategy, because Zoe strategy into Lee's Punk is pretty oppressive when you do it on repeat. Like you're just making your opponent discard multiple cards, and they're losing their board to mounted machine gun. It's a really, really like annoying strategy to deal with. And then of course you have like the Menastings and the Lyleen Knocks to recur your pieces. So you can Lyleen Knocked, return Menasting to the board. Menasting you can tap Menasting for mounted machine gun. And now they have to choose, like, do they want to hit the Menasting and kill it? If they board clear it, you get a card back. You can get your Lyling knocked back and then play that again. You can grab back an interrupt if you want. You can grab back Lee's Punk to pressure their hand more. Overall, this is pretty like strong. This is pretty good consistent control deck. The whole point of this deck, in my point of view, is to not let your opponent have anything. You don't let your opponent have any board. You play 4 mounted machine gun for that purpose. You don't let your opponent have any hand, because you're pressuring with Zoe strategy and Lee's Punk. The whole point of the deck is like, it doesn't matter what you play, it's gone. You're gonna lose it. And the win condition here, from what I'm saying, is drain your opponent's resources until they have nothing left to play, and then you start pressuring for game. But then you also have the option of just going completely aggro if you want to play like a total psychopath and just Kativa into Lamball into Lee's Punk. You could be like turn 1 Kativa, turn 2 Kativa Lamball, and then all of a sudden turn 3 slam down like you'll be at 6 mana at that point. You could play 2 Lee's Punks on top of that and just go full aggro and just shove damage down your opponent's face. Yeah, you might get shotgunned if that happens, but like if you're not playing against blue-red, or if you're not playing against red at all, you can technically get away with it. You might be able to get away with it. So it's like it's a fairly interesting like deck. I like it. Would I play this at an IRL tournament? Probably, yeah. I don't know if I'd play it for like a regionals and up. I would definitely love to play this at locals. I'm like, I think this would be an excellent deck to fuck around with at locals. It's also really cheap. Like most of your cards are outside of Zoe's strategy. Everything else is like pennies. Like Bushi's like cheap. Menasting's an uncommon. Like if you needed like an affordable budget deck to do well with in tournaments, you can pick this up. If you can't afford Zoe's strategy, you could play Black Marketeer. Black Marketeer is like the 25-cent version of this. It's obviously way worse, but it fulfills the purpose of like adding cards back to your hand from grave. So you have that option. So I think this is a great deck. I think it, like, for what it does, I think it's very good. It's very good at what it does. Is it strong in this meta? Unclear. Unclear. I still think Red Blue Dragons is like just stands head and shoulders above everything. That this deck is probably not the best to play. So I wouldn't play this at like a if I had like a world, like if I'm playing at a Bushiroad card fight event, right? And the winner gets to go to Worlds, I'm not gonna like risk a trip to Japan by playing this deck. You know what I mean? Like I would try to play the best deck possible. So, and I don't think this is necessarily it, but I also think this is a great deck in its own right. So I'm really interested to seeing, like, you know, the replays here, how this fares into different matchups. There's no Strike from the Darkness, despite being a purple deck. So your answers to Digtoise are going to have to be slam a Menasting in their face, which could get interrupted. Or you mount a machine gun them, but you have to generate a lot of wood. You don't have Flambeau, so you have to be careful about that, about your wood usage. Or use Zoe's strategy. And Zoe's strategy may actually be like the best option. But if you're using Zoe's strategy, the strongest effect on Zoe's strategy is to grab the card from your graveyard and make your opponent discard. Like, that is easily the strongest effect. So if you're forcing your Zoe strategy to butcher instead, you know, you're kind of giving up that resource, and you don't. Yeah, you could still do it if you butcher your Lease Punk, and then your Lease Punk, you know, makes you know, to kill their Digtoise, or you could, you know, butcher your Menasting if they interrupted. Like, they interrupt it, you butcher it, you kill their Digtoise anyways, and then you get back a card. Like, there's some good applications there. But I still think if you're forced to do that, then you've effectively, like, you can't do the discard effect with Zoe's strategy and pressure the hand more, which is what I would ideally want to do if I was playing this type of deck. I would want to pressure the hand as much as possible. Like, I would be like, yeah, I want to play Zoe's strategy, make them discard every single time. I want to grab a Lease Punk, make them discard more. And then I would find different ways to pressure the board instead. So I would trade out like Kativa for Flambeau, and then Flambeau would give me 2 wood for mounted machine gun, things like that. It would, like, little adjustments like that. But it's just like differences in you know, gameplay style. I don't think one is necessarily worse than the other. At least at this early in the tournament, or at early in the meta. I think there's plenty more playtesting to see. There's a lot of replay analysis that is yet to be done yet. So, and of course, ranked is coming out, you know, in a couple days. So there, obviously, this is a deck to look out for. This is definitely a deck to look out for. It looks really annoying to play against, and I would personally think I would have a miserable time if I had to sit across from this in a tournament. But yeah, overall, congratulations, Mimizuku. Uh, this is a very good deck. And I hope to see you at the next one. Okay. Here's the last deck of top 8. And this is pretty. It's just blue purple dragons. So without further ado, let me get into it. This is Phil's blue purple dragons, Chillet Jormantide. Pretty straightforward. You except it's similar to Pingu's list that won the tournament, but Pingu's list has some key differences that sets it apart. And from what it seemed like, you know, at face value, it's and I think they collabed a little bit where they, you know, kind of got some ideas off one another. And then Pingu, like, decided to further adapt with the launcher. From what I understood in the Discord, that could be completely wrong. So correct me if I'm wrong, Phil. That if that's the case, you know, just kind of talking to him in the Discord about, or like watching him talk about it in the Discord. But looking at the list, you have 4 Elphadrans, 4 Pinglets, 4 Chillets, and then let's see, looks like 14 interrupts. 14 interrupts. I kind of wish it was sorted by the card type so I could see the interrupts as separate. But uh, anyways, 3 Relaxosaurus, 4 Ephedrine Aquas, 3 Grappling Guns, and then you still see the 2 Strike from the Darkness that I think was on Pingu's list. I have to double check. That was Pingu that played only 2 Strike. And then there's 4 Aurora Guides. So it seems to me like the very obvious game plan here is to just play good dragons. Get your consistent Chillet Aurora Guide play that gets you Jormantide to draw a card. You have Zoe's strategy to recur your Chillet, so bring them back to your hand and replay them. Since you're not playing Penguin Launcher, you choose to play Grappling Gun instead. Your defensive game plan is a little different. So instead of board clearing them, you're restanding your Jormantide more often than not to be a good blocker, and then trying to maintain pressure there. So there's a little bit of differences between this and the Penguin Launcher variant that Pingu played. But the overall concept is pretty similar. You just play really good dragons. Looking at the list itself, I don't think there's much to really say. It has a really good matchup into green because Relaxosaurus will just screw over Digtoise, Strike from the Darkness, screws over Digtoise. And then of course, like for big pals, like let's say you're playing against Jormantide, that's what the 2 strikes are for. Outside of that, it's pretty cookie cutter. It's just good stuff dragons with some penguins thrown in there. And it's very mid-rangey. I'll put it that way. I think Elphedran is really, like, as a 4-of isn't bad. Definitely Chillet's effectiveness as a card scales more with how many dragons you play, so maxing out on the dragons is an acceptable strategy. So it's not necessarily bad. You have a lot of board pressure early, like you can Elphedran if you're going first and they play Furnace turn 1, which they should not if you're playing against dragons, because then you could just Elphedran them on your 4 cost. And now not only did they play Furnace, not only do you have the ability to attack the Furnace and kill it, in order for them to defend it, they got to discard an Interrupt, and you don't want to be discarding an Interrupt before you even get your Chillets out. Like if you're discarding Interrupts that early in the game, it feels really bad. So like the Elphedran will punish early game structures very, very well, and we have seen several of those in the top 8. We've seen a lot. Almost every deck has played some type of like early game structure, whether it be Stone Pit, whether it be Furnace, and then it also kills Mounted Machine Gun. So, and that's a pretty high powered structure that you want to get rid of. So it makes sense. Like Elphedran is just really, really good here. I think there is potential to like pressure more with Elphedran if you played more gears. But I also know like this list is like very like event focused. Like Zoe's strategy Aurora Guide is the core here. Like you play 4 Aurora Guard and 4 Zoe's strategy, and it's very obvious. The idea is to get as much value as possible out of your Chillet plays, as opposed to like say Pingu's list, where Pingu also had the option of board clearing whenever he wanted. This is more straightforward. This is like very, very basic, very linear. Play dragons, get them out, get them big, and just just win the game from there. Just try to win the game from there. I think these key differences and the different flavors of all the dragon decks really sets them apart in ways that you wouldn't expect. Like you would think like, oh, it's all just Chillet slop. That I hear that, I see that a lot like in the Discord when people are talking with one another about dragons. But these differences really set the deck apart because there's like different things that they're strong against and different things they're weak against. So like Elphedran, like this list for example, if you get board cleared, it's going to be a little rough. You like the whole point. If you get board cleared, your game plan is to rebuild the board. You know, get another Chillet out, get another Jormantide out. Like it, like you. That's what Zoe's strategy is for. You don't play any board clears of your own. So if if you have an oh shit button, you need an oh shit button. That's like the penguin launcher is not there, and that's you have to win by beating over your opponent with attacks. So that's something that you have to like be mindful when you're playing something like this. Like compared to like the other lists that we've seen in the top cut, where the primary point of those decks is to have non-attack based clear. You know, penguin launcher doesn't interact with interrupts. Mounted machine gun lets you ignore interrupts. Like you just have a very consistent way of killing pals. Whereas in this deck, all you have is Strike of Darkness and Zoe's strategy. And then of course, obviously just attacking. So I think overall it's a solid cookie cutter list. It's definitely more like leaning towards the dragon side because you're playing 4 Alpha Drans. And so you want to like the whole point of the deck is to high roll the Chillet. So you really want to high roll that Chillet as much as you can. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Like it's not a bad strategy by any means. I think against like some of the more refined decks, it'll start to fall apart, especially if you're like playing against like let's say Pingu's deck. Like Pingu's deck will just like grab a a penguin and then launch it in your face. Or if you're playing against the green Super Kativa's deck, where Super Kativa's deck can just literally spawn a penguin out of nowhere. Like you're an in-game, you know what I mean? Like you could just literally egg into Lyleen into penguin and then launch your face, complete all from the deck. And you would have to rebuild your board every turn. Eventually, you're gonna run out of resources when that happens. So you have to be like kind of careful when you're flooding the board, not to do so too early. But either way, like this is solid. This is a solid mid-range deck. I don't think they're like it does have it. It is weaker against like the more control-based variants, and that's kind of like the classic mid-range versus control archetype. You know, if you're playing mid-range, you generally will you lose to control, and you know it's for reasons like this. Is like if all you can do is flood the board, well, if they just shoot your board every turn, then what are you going to do? You know, what can you do? Overall, I think, like I said, I would I play the. If it's a solid deck, would I play this out of locals? Probably not. Um, Probably not. I don't particularly like decks without board clear. I just feel like board clear is just way too important in this game to not have it. Like you need a form of mass removal. If you don't have a form of mass removal, you're just gonna have a bad time. So that's my only gripe. I think if I were to play a list, it would probably be closer to Pingu's list. Not to like heart, you know, like talk shit or anything, Phil. I think you played this deck very well to make it to top 8. I think this deck is solid in its own right. It has its own merits. If I were to want to play this at the highest level at a IRL tournament and win the whole thing, I would probably make some adjustments and do some things differently. But overall, I mean, it's a solid core. It's dragons. I mean, what do you want me to say? Some things I have noticed is that with purple is that no one's playing Asagon. And I think it was mentioned in the Discord, like Asagon's really bad against shotgun. It's 1200 exact. And it doesn't really do anything in the mirror outside of like kill like the little shitter things, but you didn't have a problem killing weaker pals to begin with. So it doesn't make sense to play Asagon in that at that point, because your deck's already good at killing weaker pals. So why would you play Asagon at that point? Like just go ahead and like play Jormantide. Jormantide is just the better card. It has the better stat line. either Jormantide is going to do it for you. That's just the way it is, and it shows here. Like, none of the decks played Asagon. Almost all the Dragon decks played Jormantides. Even had a Dragon deck that had no Chillet and all Jormantides. So just goes to show, like, if you're gonna play Dragons, like, Jormantide is the way. So overall, this kind of concludes like my face value analysis of all these decks. I probably said a few things that were maybe perhaps a bit controversial. At the end of the day, they're just my opinions. They're just analysis. It's just an analysis from my perspective. And I haven't even watched any replays yet. So I think as I watch the replays and I learn more about the decks and how they play and how the pilot built them, I'll probably get a better understanding of like why certain things are played the way that they are. And and then as we go through this journey through my next few videos, we'll all learn that together. So in any case, once again, congratulations on your top 8 finish, Phil, and I hope to see you at the next tournament. And for all the viewers, thank you for watching all the way to the end. And hope to see you in the next video. All right, peace.